Welcome to this new video game series on making an indie game. So over the recent UK bank holiday, I had 3 days off and spent them all playing Fallout 4. And since then I've been getting incredibly depressed and guilty that I didn't use my time more efficiently. So at 11 PM last night, I decided to start making a game. I've been writing a book recently, and this idea came about based on some research for that book. And now I've got a general idea of what the game is and how it will work, I've not considered how I'll go about this in the game engine. So talking about game engines, I'm going to be using ClickTeam Fusion off Steam, which makes making games easier as the programming is using logic rather than script. So this first video is about throwing a prototype together. It's not about trying to get anything pretty on screen or getting the layout 100% correct. I've decided to just get general gameplay working as quickly as possible. So let's get started. So I've got Fusion already loaded up and ready to go. First I need to create a game file, which is called an application confusingly in Fusion. This automatically creates a single frame with a 640 by 480 screen resolution. I want the game to be at least 1920 by 1080 for now, so let's change that. I'll probably change this once I have the game up and running, but for now that size will do. Now I have a single frame and I'm going to rename it so I know what the frame is about. This frame will be called Logo. This is where I'll display my company logo. For now I will just put some text on screen. In fact, most of the frames I'm going to create are only there for layout purposes, and I won't be doing much with them initially anyway, as I'm more interested in making a game prototype and not menu screens. So to begin with, I need to add an object, and objects are the core requirement of a Fusion game. Perhaps you want a sprite as your player character, or a number to count down from 10, perhaps some text on screen to tell the player a story. These are all handled in Fusion by objects. You can't make a game without them, so we're going to need to add one. So let's add a text object. There are a few in Fusion, and I hope in future they merge them all into a single powerful text object. First I had the wrong one. I had a static text, and then I decided I'd rather have a string object. Sometimes in Fusion it's more of a preference which object you use, because some objects can do the same as other objects or very similar, so you can do the same process with multiple objects. Okay, so I put the text as logo screen. It's not very pretty, but who cares. The game by default is running in Windows mode, which means I can close it by pressing the X in the top right hand corner of the game once I've started it. But I'd rather just press the escape key, because later on when I run the game in full screen I won't have the X to press, so it'll make it a lot easier. So here is the programming of Fusion. I select a condition. This is what I want the engine to be looking out for. Once it's true, it will run the events to the right. So I select the keyboard and mouse object and select upon pressing a key. For this event, I select directly under the storyboard object. This handles how the game moves between different frames. I select end the application. So it's easy to see what will happen here. You press the escape key and the application game ends. So I'm going to create an intro sequence screen. This is where I'd have an intro to the game, but again it's just going to be another blank screen with a bit of text on. The next frame I want is the main menu frame. I'm going to put a few bits of text here to say what it would potentially do, but none of that will work for now, it's just an example. I'll do exactly the same for the credit screen. No point putting anything here right now except a bit of temporary text. So now onto the game. I'm creating a war game, and there'll be enemy and player units which I'll need to move around the screen. To make this easier, I'm going to create a visible grid which is just for testing purposes. So I start off drawing a box and duplicating it to create a grid on screen, and then I see if that grid size is what I want, and if not I delete it and resize it. until I get sort of around about the size that I want. Now, I can change this later on, it really doesn't matter. It's just for testing purposes. So I've created two sets of coloured icons. I've created a green set which represents the allies and a red set which represents the axis. These aren't the physical units that will be moving on screen, but the start and end points. This will become clearer as I make more of the game later. So this is going to be a real-time strategy game, and that means both the player and the computer will be making decisions at the same time. So though this is a real-time strategy game, I won't be running the game in full real time, and that means that 1 second in real life will not equal 1 second in the game. So for the moment I want every 30 seconds of real time to equal about 15 minutes of game time. There are a number of ways that I can do this in Fusion, and I've decided to use counters and a list because I also want to represent the date on screen. I spend a bit of time trying to figure that out. I haven't really thought about the best way of doing this beforehand, so I'm just kind of like going straight in and making it. I do run into a few problems because of that, and it was getting quite late at night and it was nearly 12 o'clock and I still couldn't get it to work properly, so I decided to come back to it the day after. And I found that I made a really simple mistake and it was easy to fix. And so now I've got a working timer and date. It is a bit heavy-handed though. I've had to create a list of dates and times that I want to show, and I just move through that list. There are probably easier ways of doing it, and also if I change the time frame from the current every 15 minutes to say 5 minutes, I'll have to create a new list. And though that's a bit of a hassle, it's not massively problematic. So that's it for the date and time. In the future I might want to add more days or extend the number of hours that the game plays for, but I've got enough set up to move on to something else. That's it for today's video. Join me next time where I hope to move on to something a little more exciting.